let's get into the Jets. Let's start with, again, kind of looking back and kind of recapping some of their 2021 performance to set the stage as we kind of look forward into 2022. See, the average kind of power ranking was around 29. Started the season off 0-3, 0-3 against the spread. Had a surprising win against Tennessee. And then moved up rapidly simply because they played competitively with the Falcons. And then had that very surprising win against the Bengals, which knocked out. That was the first game that knocked out a huge swath of the survivor pools. Because pretty much leading all the way up into that game, like 75% of the pool was still involved. And then about 50%, boom, gone in that game.
And even this is a good point just in general about power rankings and volatility and actually buying changes. Look at where the Bengals were. Right, the Bengals had actually started their upswing. They were 12th in their game against the Jets. They lost kind of a weird, variant game against the Jets. And then we'll see when we preview the AFC North, they also started to take a tumble before they eventually climbed back up. A good reminder of variance in football and volatility and kind of always wanting to be on the right side of where teams will end up, even through the noise of the NFL regular season.
And so we see, like, going into 2021, the Jets had a win total expectation of 6. Didn't even meet that. Went 4-13, 6-11 against the spread. This is one of the nastiest numbers that I've seen thus far, kind of putting these slides together. A 100 unit better betting on the Jets last year on their money line and spread, lost $1,000. Pythag had them around 4 wins. Our Pythag 2.0 actually had them at 5.3. So a little bit better than realized performance. But one of the kind of key inputs to Pythag 2.0 is, as we know, one of the key inputs to Pythag 1.0 is points for, points against. And so essentially Pythag 2.0 looks at points for over expectation and points against over expectation. So if a team is expected to win by 7 and they win by 7, they get 0 benefit for that. It's only in excess of how much they were supposed to win by is what they'll actually be credited for. Never really flirted with kind of anyone, I would say, abandoning their thesis on the Jets at any point in time last season. There was always pretty much a perception that they were bad. Zach Wilson started the first kind of 6-7 games. Then he got hurt. Mike White came in and performed actually quite admirably. In fact, I would say when he was performing, that's when the Jets offense actually kind of clicked for a little bit. And in fact, that's when they beat the Bengals.
That's right. And even had a pretty good first quarter against the Colts before he got hurt. And even Josh Johnson stepped in.
And that was another game where they were huge underdogs. Again, a 10-point underdog. And you're right. Throughout that kind of first quarter or so, they were kind of making Colts bettors nervous for sure.
If anything, it actually points to the power of the offensive play calling. Zach Wilson was awful last year. There's no way around that. We'll talk about whether that matters. But I think it says more about how the Jets position their quarterbacks than Mike White being good. I don't think Mike White's an NFL quarterback, but the very fact that he could put up 34 points speaks to kind of the power of the offensive design and the offensive game plan.
We see on the right side, kind of like how the market positioned around the Jets on a week-to-week basis. And it's pretty much red across the board. The 2 times that they kind of hit the green from a betting percentage perspective, so at least kind of more than 50% of the betting market kind of leaning into them, was versus the Falcons, which they were competitive, but lost against the spread. And then late in the season versus the Jags, when they actually did win that game. So now let's kind of go into the offseason, look at the NFL draft. I'm not an expert on the NFL draft. One of the reasons why I solicited help from Ron A. Sports over here, who does a whole breakdown, kind of detailed analysis of every team, every pick. It's really impressive. He just provides some really sharp insights. But so I basically kind of got some of his reports he sent across to me so we could share on the stream, and then shared a few nuggets from his reports. He's certainly excited with Garrett Wilson from Ohio State. So that just adds even more ammunition to an already kind of young wide receiver core. And then also they drafted running back Breece Hall from Iowa State. And I've heard mixed reports on him. A second round pick. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. One of the things I was reading, though, is he's not great kind of off the tackle. So that could potentially, mitigate some of his upside. Yeah, so let's talk now about other offseason changes for the Jets. So boosted the offensive line, replaced Marcus May with Jordan Whitehead, signed CJ Uzoma, lost Jamison Crowder, but again, he couldn't necessarily stay healthy kind of year in and year out. Had a decent year last year.
Elijah Moore is going to be an upgrade in the slot.
There's more than enough talent in the wide receiver core to kind of absorb that loss.
Addition that's not even on this list is Mekhi Becton, who essentially was out all of last year, getting hurt in week 1. That's a top 10 tackle.
Yeah, and I think there's questions around, how healthy one is he going to be? What's his mental state? If he comes back, if he's healthy, and if he performs in line with expectation, that would be huge. You could grade the Jets offensive line as potentially, top 10, top 5, if it all kind of comes together. That would be huge for a young quarterback, like Zach Wilson, who also struggles with kind of decision making, to be able to kind of give him more time.
There certainly is a case for being above average at every position.
Let's move on to 2022 now. So still pedestrian expectations. So win total kind of expectations at 6. Our Pythag 2.0 model suggests no bet. Strength of schedule, the expectation of a strength of schedule. This is kind of using the futures implied kind of win totals. Of course, like we talked about on previous streams as well. The strength of schedule can totally change over the course of the season. Projected to be the 8th hardest still. They don't get a break from a rest perspective, so it's a net -8 days of rest for them. And then their mean spread, you kind of look across the board, you can see that they're underdogs in pretty much every game except for 3 games versus arguably like 3 of the kind of bottom 5 teams in the league. Yeah. So mean spread, almost 4 points. And it's probably actually a little bit higher than that since we don't have a line for the Browns. Anything stick out to you kind of when you're looking at the Jets?
I think we're going to get a pretty good sense of kind of what Zach Wilson is early on, at least the tendencies, how they plan to utilize Zach Wilson. But if I kind of like what I see and they sneak out a couple wins, let's say they're like, 2-4, 2-5, that's kind of the time I'll be investing in the Jets' future, considering their schedule towards the second half with games against the Seahawks, Jaguars, Lions, Bears, even the Vikings aren't too daunting.
One of the reasons I don't like this for the Jets is it's going to put pressure, obviously from the fan base for sure. If the team is struggling, which it wouldn't be unfair to suggest that they would be. They're underdogs through week 12, and these are tough games.
Obviously, if Zach Wilson's the same quarterback he was last year, they're going to be a disaster. They're not winning games. Again, they beat the Bengals last year. Anything can happen in one game. I think that's what the Bengals game represents. And who knows with the Dolphins? I don't think they're going into Lambeau and winning. I don't think they're going into Mile High and winning. But I think really the 3 of the first 5 games are very winnable.
I don't think anyone wants to open versus the Ravens.
No.
Since that always seems like that's when they put in their home run performance kind of year in and year out. I'm a little bit more bullish on the Bengals. I feel like they're like a popular sell so far in the offseason.
I'm with you.
So I still think that there's upside there, and I actually feel like market skepticism creates an opportunity there. And then I'm actually not that bearish on the Steelers either, the same way kind of, again, relative to market expectations, particularly if Trubisky is the starting quarterback. But I want to give Trubisky a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. He always showed flashes in Chicago. It was just kind of always met with then some putrid performance.
Yeah.
I allow for the possibility that was a consequence of just a terrible coaching staff, toxic environment, kind of new resources, new team can really open up things for him.
Yeah.
And then, maybe the Dolphins.
It's really, we're dancing around the Zach Wilson question, which is if you're projecting Wilson to be the 33rd ranked quarterback, they're not winning many of these games. If you're building in a projection of, 22 or 16, it's going to look very different. And our perception of the Jets is going to look very different. Would our projection of the Jets look very different if Zach Wilson didn't play last year?
Mine would.
How much are we putting in the? Yeah, that's fair. How much are we putting?
Because the thing is, I came in, when I watched him at BYU, especially the year before his final year, he looked just really bad. He had some highlight reel kind of plays. And one of the things I always kind of criticize someone like Justin Fields for is I feel like Justin Fields is a bad quarterback in my view. But he has just enough kind of star power, highlight reel plays that kind of keeps the believers the requisite fuel to kind of keep pushing that narrative. I was bearish coming in with Zach Wilson into the season. He obviously was a star in the preseason, and that started to kind of change a lot of people's minds. And the last thing I would say on the Jets here is just I feel like they play a lot of tough teams, and a lot of these tough teams are not the teams that are necessarily going to underperform. And then I think the bad teams they play, I think, are actually teams that could outperform. Teams like the Lions, teams like the Jags, where you look at them right now and they're favorites. I would not be surprised by the time they play them that they're not favorites. Jets under. That's where I'm feeling.
The price is set fine. I might buy a future midseason.